Serpent Temple Weekly Review. This week we're going to be looking at Neurosis' album Through Silver in Blood, released in 1996, followed by Botanist's album Flora 6, released in 2014, and the new album by Steel Bearing Hand called Slay in Hell, released in 2021. So Floyd, what do you think of Neurosis?
I think it's a very seminal album. No, it's one of those albums that's super important to the scene, I think. Neurosis are a band that have quite an interest in, I'm fucking so fed up saying the word trajectory, but I'll use it again. They've got a really interest in their trajectory, because like, if you ever listen to their earlier shit, that's like, so it's almost like hardcore, punky and stuff, and it's like this album really kind of turned shit on its head, and I think what I find cool about their kind of style of, I think it's hard to categorize them, but like, if you were to categorize them, you would say they're kind of like sludgy post-metals almost, but whereas I think Cult of Luna are a sort of band that have a similar style. Their music is quite ethereal and almost pretty.
It's much prettier.
Whereas like this is almost in some contexts the same genre, but just far more anxiety.
This is like, you're in an alleyway, you don't know why you're there, and there's a guy with a knife.
Yeah.
Like he's coming towards you, and you're not entirely sure why. That's this album, yeah.
But I think Steve Von Til described it best himself. He said, he might have been referring to the recording process, but I think he described the whole thing as kind of like a railroads through hell.
I have read the same thing that you have read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a perfect, he might have been describing the recording process, because I think at the time they were all going through some pretty mad shit. Like I think Scott Kelly was homeless at the time.
He was indeed.
Yeah, which is never going to be never going to not be a stressful situation. But I also think that, it's a perfect kind of a summary of the music, because it's, it's really like truly apocalyptic sounding. And I think, even the first track, the title track, Through Silver and Blood, I think even the lyrical content is almost depicting like an apocalypse-like scenario. It's kind of like a post-war kind of situation. I think that's what even the whole, the album cover with the blood running down the eyes, I think that's in reference to, the damage that can be caused by nuclear war.
They have like that song with the nuclear bomb transfiguration kind of idea in it. Isn't there one where like they quote a guy? I'm so bad at making notes this week apparently. I've just written nuclear bomb tied to transfiguration of Christ. What am I talking about? There's a transformation of world through light quote in Become the Ocean. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But that's there. It's the thing.
We'll run with it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thanks, Neurosis. I hope you're enjoying my feedback.
But it's funny, sorry to interrupt, when we were discussing when we were talking about doing a Neurosis album, because I think it was, I think there are bands that just, I think have had so much influence on the scene. Like you hear it in Mastodon, 100%.
Oh yeah.
Like you listen to this and you're like, oh my god, this is totally what Mastodon have got. Especially that early shit, like Remission, like that's totally like Neurosis-like, in my opinion. But we were talking about kind of which album to do. I think you were both saying that your favourite albums are A Sun That Never Sets, right?
Yeah.
And it's true, because that is like, because I actually re-listened to that album again, because it's been a while since I've like went through, because they've got quite an extensive discography, and the music is quite heavy. So it's like, it's not like one of those bands you can just throw in at any point, but like, I just totally forgot how kind of melodic the album was. And almost like, much more accessible than this. Like this is kind of like a real like fucking beast of a fucking album.
I was reading like a Steve Von Til interview, and he talked about how he had like a neighbour who was a biker, and like he was like talking to his neighbour, and he was like, oh yeah, I've just released this album Through Silver and Blood, here's like a CD. Apparently his neighbour went home and listened to it and came back and he was like, man, that was like being punished. Apparently Von Til was like, yeah, like he had like a really interesting thing that he said, that they were all really obsessed with repetition at the time, and the idea of repetition. And I quote that he was saying, if it sounds good 4 times, well, how will it sound after 32 times? If that was, well, that was pretty good, but fuck everyone, how about 64 times? And it was written as a kind of punishment to whoever would dare listen. But ultimately, we were the ones paying the price for physically having to play it. So I think that was just a way of keeping it sonically interesting. If you're going to repeat something that many times, how do you carve out an interesting psychedelic sound?
Yeah. Do you know, that totally makes sense to me, because I think it's got a very hypnotic feel a lot of the times. And, I think that's actually helped a lot by the drums, because it's very like tom heavy, the drums.
Yeah.
That's Tom, the drum equipment, not a random individual named Tom. And and like
say
it's
it
just
3 times, and like someone will appear.
yeah. But it's, no, I think like the drums really add to that, because they're really quite tribal in a lot of parts. Like you think, it's funny, the first track, the title track, Through Silver and Blood, I think is actually quite almost a perfect encapsulation of what's kind of ahead in store in the rest of the album. And I really like the way, because they've got some tracks that are a bit shorter in length, like you've got I and Locust Star, which are like, a bit more accessible and a bit more kind of groovy and punchy, and a bit more easier to, I don't want to say easier to get into, but it's a bit more for the immediate ear to get behind, whereas the other tracks are a bit more long and drawn out, and quite pained.
Yeah.
I find
This reminds me of Cormac McCarthy's The Road. I don't know if you've ever read it or what. I've not watched the film, but it's like that similar bleakness of like, you feel like you're on a journey, you feel like you're in purgatory, and there's like no end in sight.
You said you've read the book?
I've read the book, yeah.
Well, I've seen the film but not read the book.
The book is fucking brutal. I don't know what the film is like.
It's fucking depressing. It's got Viggo Mortensen in it. But
I have seen the film.
Yeah.
I think, no, you said, no. Who was on the cover of the book? It was like the film cover.
Ah, got you.
But yeah, I have seen, there's like that basement scene with the people.
Oh yeah, they're
the
like kind of zombified or something.
They've kept the people alive, but they've like chopped off their legs and arms to eat them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think me and my partner on a whim were just like, should we go watch a film? It was at the Odeon around the corner, actually, funny enough, at Chancross Road.
Date night, babe.
Yeah. Well, what's playing the road? And I was like, oh yeah, I think it's like a post-apocalyptic like thriller. And it's like just came out and just like, oh, I just fucking go home now. I'm done.
That is such a brutal Neurosis date night.
But you know, that's perfect. It literally, like, as soon as you mentioned that, I was just like, yeah, it's like the perfect pairing. Like, I think it's almost the perfect soundtrack for that sort of story.
Yeah, it's definitely bleak. It's so bleak. I really enjoy that bleakness. I mean, it's a very good lockdown album if you want to have a Black Sheep Wall moment from the 90s, I say.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just me and Shem were mentioning this the other week, where if I listen to this, like when I first started getting into guitar music, like if I listened to this, like back then, I would have been like, the fuck is this? I was like, I am not into this one iota, but like, I think now I'm so glad I listened to it when I was at the right time to appreciate it properly, because to me, I've been in love with this album for a long time, and it's to the point where I actually put off listening to a lot of their other discography for the longest time. So I was thinking, well, I mean, I can't see how it can kind of improve past this point, but they have done some great albums like since and before as well. Definitely.
I still remember very clearly the first time I ever heard them. I was at High Voltage Festival, like probably 2010. It was a long time ago. God, that's like more than a decade now. And I was just walking around. I'd never heard of them. I didn't know who they were. And there was like Dream Theater were playing that year. So the main stage was over there, and there was like a smaller stage, like a way small stage. And there were these guys with these huge Japanese drums, and I was like, whoa, what are these? Like, Japanese drumming is really cool, and they had the huge drums. They had like 3 people on stage just hammering away, and it was Neurosis.
Yeah.
And I just stood there, and I was in total awe. Everyone was just like, "What the fuck? This is so good." And they were probably the best band of the festival because it's the only band whose set I actually remember.
Yeah. Where was High Voltage?
It was in Victoria Park.
Oh, okay.
So it's near here. It's like near Hyde Park.
Oh, got it. I have no recollection of that festival. I've never heard of it before.
It's a really good festival.
Oh.
Yeah, they had like Sabbath? No. Yeah, maybe. They might have had Sabbath. They had Dream Theater headline that year. And I think the year after they had like Ozzy or something.
I nearly saw them live once. It was when Yob...
Was that Godflesh?
Godflesh. And Neurosis was really had a really bad cough, and I was just like, it was so smoky in the venues at the Forum in Kentish Town. I was like, I fucking can't do it. I'm just gonna have to go home.
I remember seeing that lineup and being like, I really want to go, but I'm way too lazy. I just want to stay. I think I was working that day or something. Yeah.
It's crazy how many gigs you miss just out of sheer like apathy or laziness. Because I'll catch him next time.
Yeah. If only I knew.
Yeah.
If only in 2019 I hadn't bailed on like 5 gigs.
Oh God. But no, there's a couple of tracks I really like on this album. I think I like all the tracks really. I mean, minus the interludes because they're just interludes. I think "I" is a great track. It's the third track. I really love the. I think as a vocalist, I always appreciate when you've got quite a lot of vocal dynamics going on. Obviously, you've got the 3 vocalists. Obviously, I think Scott and Steve are almost quite indistinguishable with their voices. They're very similar. I think Steve just does a lot of backup to Scott's vocals, but then you've got Dave, the bassist. He does all like the deep, like proper bellowing like vocals, and it's funny because it's kind of sounds like growling, but it's not overly distorted and comical like a lot of death metal vocals. It's still quite natural.
Of some of the vocals remind me of early Mastodon vocals.
Yeah, totally, and you can totally hear that's where they took their inspiration from, and it's just like in the track "I," it's just really good. It's really cool how they juxtapose like the higher register kind of like screams and yells with like Dave the bassist's like almost subterranean vocals, and I just think it's a really cool. Just adds a new layer to the music.
You know, Mastodon formed at a High on Fire show, and I reckon that Matt might have taken some of his vocals from Neurosis too, because he has a similar bellowing way of singing as well. Yeah. So maybe they both, I don't know if like they got it through Matt or if they both got it, they probably obviously knew who Neurosis were, because it's Mastodon. But yeah, Shem agrees. Yeah, it's just really cool. They have definitely influenced like a mad number of bands. I feel like it's another Converge situation. Yeah. Where they probably spawned like a huge variety of different flavours of inspiration. Yeah.
There's a few bands that kind of fall into that category. I think Converge are one, or Converge, whichever way you go about it. Meshuggah, for better or worse, I think are one of those seminal bands as well. Yeah. But I think Neurosis, to me it's funny because for ages I would see, before I listened to them, Neurosis kind of reminded me of like the Tool of the extreme metal world.
Oh gosh.
Not sonically, just by the fact that everybody that seemed to be into Neurosis were like super fucking like
into them.
High IQ. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what a lot of Tool fans are like. They think they're the smartest motherfuckers in the world. That's why I'm just calling out Tool fans now.
I hate Tool. But I have some really good friends that are Tool fans, but at the same time I know exactly what you mean.
But that's kind of what I thought Neurosis fans were a bit like. I thought, maybe they're just one of these, like, you know, bands that don't have as much substance as the fans think they do. But then I listened to it and I was just like, no, this is fucking unreal. Like, this is some god tier shit.
Yeah, they are fucking really good. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but Steve Von Till had a set at Roadburn Redux last week. And he did like a really intimate kind of really emotional set. It was really good.
No, I did not see that. I regret to say I've not caught any of the Redux performances.
It's too late now. They only were online until the Tuesday.
Oh shit! So they're not staying online?
No. All the bands are keeping the rights to the filming, so they can use them as they like. So you might see them pop up again. There were some really good sets. Like the way they filmed them were amazing.
Yeah. Oh shit! I'm really gutted I missed that now.
Oh, I didn't realise you didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm moving house, so I've had so much shit on my plate. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll see some of the sets pop up on YouTube and stuff.
Funny enough, mentioned I did see that Steve Von Till released a music video. I think either today or yesterday for one of his solo projects. He's got so it might have been something that probably was featured in this set there. But,
maybe, yeah.
But that's cool, and every time I've ever seen them in interviews or read in the interviews, that they seem quite openly vulnerable, and I think that's always been something that I quite admire in a lot of sort of musicians who kind of wear their heart on their sleeve, and kind of you can definitely hear it in the music. Like I think, you know, when you hear, going back to the vocals again, you know, it's not like your standard, you know, harsh vocals that are overly distorted or almost like, you know, it's technique heavy, like it's very raw and visceral. And it's kind of got that kind of, I think that might even harken back to the whole punk rock aesthetic that they kind of started with, you know, 'cause that's all about, you know, just doesn't matter how it fucking sounds, you just lay it out there and whatever it comes out as, you know.
I like that they're not trying to make their pain look cool. I think some bands do that in metal, where they try and pass it off as just like raw masculine aggression, whereas these guys, I feel like they're actually like sad, like really sad. They need hugs, and you know, it's for music for people who are like cool with that kind of openness and vulnerability, which I think is really cool. Even if like from an outsider's perspective or a first time listen, you might not necessarily get that from the music.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good description of kind of like a lot of extreme metal in general. I think a lot of times it takes a while to warm up to it. It could sound quite impenetrable to someone that's not. I mean, it's such an elitist thing to say that your ears need to be a bit more trained to appreciate it. But I do think it's actually true.
We were the high IQ fans all along.
yeah. But I think I would have been in the same boat myself. Like when I was listening to fucking new metal and someone put on this, I'd be like, oh, this is boring.
Mm.
But just fucking, I think it just depends where you're coming from, really.
It depends where you are on the railroad.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I wouldn't really recommend this to like a 16-year-old metalhead that's like just discovering things and wants to listen to loads of Pantera and not that I recommend listening to Pantera, but if you're at that stage, then this probably isn't for you. I think this is like a really good band for people to discover on their own and like stumble across and be like, what is this shit?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't like recommend this band to a lot of people personally.
No. I think an interesting thing as well I noted is the fact that they've had the same lineup since this album.
They have had a very consistent lineup.
Yeah, most of the members have been in there since the beginning, so since 1985. So, which is
I was reading about that.
Testament to the band's synergy, to coin
Synergy.
an American term.
There's a whole Simpsons episode about that one word. Do you remember it?
No, I've not seen it.
There's like some like boardroom 90s Simpsons episode of like synergy. It's a word. I don't know why I remembered that. But yeah, there's a Steve Von Till interview, and he's talking about how the reason he thinks that they've stayed together so long is because like they haven't made it their full-time gig, and they like step away from it when they need to step away from it, and they won't like put pressure. Because they all have loads of families and they all have lots of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So they realised early on that they couldn't like necessarily, not unless they were touring like 200 days a year, they wouldn't be able to make any money off it, and they wouldn't be able to live comfortably. And they were saying that the Melvins are probably the only band they know that's like actually able to live full time off what they do, and they tour like every day. Yeah.
But I think such is the nature of being like a heavy music band, right? Because you're not. That's the realism of the situation, is you're not going to make a living off of this alone unless you are one of the 0.001% that become the next, I don't know, Lamb of God or whoever. It's like one of those old dudes or whoever's popular that's making money at the moment. Ghosts, I suppose they're big. But yeah, and it's like, I think that makes sense to me, because I think, that's probably the death of a lot of bands that go in with that mindset, thinking that if they put enough hard work and grit and determination and put sack off everything else to put everything into this project, that things are going to be a success. And I think when things don't go the way they expect them to, I think that's what just derails a lot of bands and just kind of makes them realise that, there's not much money in the metal scene.
I think as well, if you're playing this kind of metal too, it's even harder to make money, because like you can't really market this kind of metal for a mass audience. You can't do like Neurosis dildos and you can't have like a really colourful Neurosis shirt with like rainbows and Satan and things like that. It's just not going to appeal to as many people. And like I'm sure there's some like mad marketing exec out there who could like make a shit ton of money off Neurosis, but I feel like they wouldn't want to do it that way either. It doesn't feel like it fits their sound and their story. And I think in general, like a lot of metal bands, they like you say, we have this idea of like films that we watched in the 90s of like a band is really good and some A&R guy in the back is like, hey, I'm the A&R guy. And then like there's a montage, and then 2 weeks later all the label's done all the work and they get loads of money that they don't have to pay back, and like they actually retain all the rights to their music, and they don't have to like have horrible legal battles, and they're just rich for life. And then there's a girl and they break up and everything's sad. It just doesn't, it's not like that anymore.
Funny enough, that reminds me of I got recommended a video of DMX on Instagram doing. He wasn't rapping; it was more like a spoken word thing. Mm-hmm. He was talking about the industry, but it was really good. He was basically just saying how people just get chewed up and spit out, and how the industry is actually, they don't act like it, but the truth is they're dependent on the artists because they're not creating art themselves.
Yeah, well, they're the product.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need a product. Yeah.
And it's just bullshit, really. But going back to Neurosis quickly, one of the things that I really enjoy about this album in particular, it's its first album featuring Noah Landis, who's the keyboard and samples and tape. And I don't know if he is solely responsible for these parts of some of the tracks, but there's some really like well-placed samples in a lot of the tracks.
They're like really industrial sounding.
Yeah.
It sounds like, it literally sounds like a train.
Yeah, it's like a screeching sound, and he uses it it's in quite a few tracks. And Locust Star, it's featured very prominently. It's like a
it's a really cool
loud.
sound.
It's not really jarring on camera.
It's like someone's hitting the side of a train with like a giant drum thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote down it sounded like a robot whale. So your description was much better.
I think robot whale's much better actually.
But no, it's just really like cool. It just adds like just that, because we were talking off camera how I'm not a big industrial fan, but I do like if elements of like electronica are used quite tastefully, and I think it's done very, very tastefully in this album.
This is like really close to Pretty Hate Machine by 9 Inch Nails. I think that came out in like 92, 91. This is 96. And I love 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And I like some industrials. A lot of it's really cringe.
Yeah.
But this is how I felt I imagined industrial would be when I started listening to it, and then it was just like Combi Christ. Like really horrible.
But I think that's the thing, you've got that divergent moment where I think industrial goes, you get the industrial that veers more towards symphonic music, which I don't like, but then you've got the industrial kind of more similar to elements of this album, which are really like kind of more reminiscent of Urban Decay and just
like Carnate and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, it's what's another song I really liked that I want to talk about. I really liked Strength of Fate, because I thought that had some really fucking despairing vocal work, and it starts with like a just a really melancholic riff, and I think it's the first track on this album that has the sung backing vocals before it generally escalates into something a bit more kind of visceral and harsh. And I think judging from what I was reading about the lyrics as well, I think it's talking of some pretty, like deep shit. I think themes of suicide and just general, they're not giving a fuck about life anymore.
There's a lot of like war imagery and like prey and hunting and like just desperate desolation, decay, things like that. I think I wrote down a few choice cuts. I've just written, Jesus Christ, Nina. I've just written stuff like Marching to Slaughter, Soul Salvation, Song of Broken Wings, Prey, Vision Consumed, Animal War. Like, it's all really like cold, and it's literally industrial in a way. Or the idea of people marching to slaughter and then having that like nuclear bomb kind of imagery as well, and it being tied to religion, I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, they really do a good job of creating quite a, I don't want to say maybe cinematic, but at times it does have kind of a cinematic soundscape to it.
Yeah, it sounds like those backdrops you get when bands play live. I'm pretty sure these guys do it. We have like nuclear bombs in the background and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like war imagery and black and white film and stuff. Yeah,
I've got to tell the story. When I was watching Godflesh play, I think they closed the second stage of Bloodstock one year, and they do the thing with the big backdrop, and it was, I think they have like images of, what's that big album, Street Cleaner. Yeah, and it's got images of like, it's like a dude burning or something, if I remember correctly, and like just loads of like apocalyptic fiery images, and then halfway through the set, I think the computer crashed. so just had the Windows Era logo while they're playing this horrifically oppressive, sludgy music.
Oh no!
And no one, I think it was so British, no one told them it was happening. So no one thought to have a word between songs. So by the way, the fucking computers crashed.
I've seen that happen so many times. I watched From the Bogs of Agushka, whatever they're bloody called, Open for Wardrina, and they had like a laptop. There was two guys with laptops wearing like balaclavas and suits in the Royal Festival Hall, and I was just like, who are these guys? And they come up and they're getting ready, and it just like everyone's sitting there waiting for Wardrina, and then like on the projector it just comes up with the screensaver with like the field, like the windows.
Oh, the classic one.
And it's got all their files and just like clicking the files. And that's just them coming up. That's the beginning of the show, guys.
Oh,
it was really. And they had these like plimps, and they're just like, evil suited men computer guys.
That's almost as good as when we saw that guy support Grails.
Oh, the drumming man! Yeah, there was that guy, what was he called? It was from like Gorilla Zombie. It was from Zombie. Oh, Gorilla.
We thought he was sound checking.
We thought he was
and it was
sound
his
checking.
Oh
The security, we were sitting down because we thought he was sound checking. The security told us to stand up.
He like yelled at us. He like yelled at us to say, he was like, stand up, stand up. We were like, okay. And then this guy's just like drumming and it just keeps going. And then we're just like,
It was so weird.
is this the set?
Is this it?
And then like half an hour later we're like, I guess that was the set.
Yeah.
that was the guy.
It was so bad.
It was just a man drumming.
Really?
He didn't even make eye contact with the audience. He just walked on, sat down with the kit, and was just like, it was just like a half-hour drum solo.
God, there's a couple of projects like that. What's the other one? Have you seen that guy, Author and Punisher?
Yeah.
The Dutch dude, and he's got
I've
like
heard of them. I thought they were really popular.
So it's this one dude, and he's got like this homemade machine that looks like something out of like fucking GCSE technology, and he's just moving shit back and forward, and he's making all these clunky sounds. It's actually really cool.
It's like, we get it, bro. You have no friends.
You know that's a really old idea. That idea is like 40, 50 years old now, because there was a guy, I can't remember his fucking name. There was a guy in like the 60s, I think, and he came up with the idea of a prepared piano, which is where you get an upright piano and you basically like drop bricks and spoons and like loads of shit into it.
Yeah.
And he wrote an entire like symphonies using prepared pianos, and like every prepared piano sounds different because it's out of tune. It's all fucked. You literally get a hammer and you just take a hammer to this piano.
It was John Cage, apparently.
John Cage, there we go. Of course, I fucking Jesus Christ. Yeah. Anyway, so John Cage, he came up with this idea of the prepared piano. I've seen one being used actually at the same venue. I saw it at the Royal Festival Hall. I had a migraine.
Really? It must have been jarring.
It was like a 2-hour performance.
Oh fuck.
Using and it was really cool.
Yeah.
It's like you're like, oh, this piano's full of spoons and hammers and bricks. It's just like and it just sounds really weird. They're like press a key, you don't know what sound it's gonna make. But yeah, that's kind of like the Author and Punisher thing. That comes from John Cage. So it's old as like it's not as it's modern, but it's not as contemporary as people realise.
Speaking of old bizarre instruments, it's listed on line that Dave Edwardson, the bassist, is also playing the Moog. And I had no idea what the fucking Moog was, so I had to research it.
Isn't that the keyboard thing?
Yeah, it's like a synthesizer keyboard type thing.
I love Moogs. Trent Reznor uses Moogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite cool.
I just like the word Moog. Moog. In Star Trek, the Ferengi Quark calls his mother Moogie.
Moogie,
There you go.
That's a good fact, which I've already forgotten.
I don't blame you. Yeah, anyway. So that's Neurosis. That's a really good album.
Also, I want to give a shout because we mentioned it before we started filming. That's the bagpipe outro on Purify was great. And Purify is a great track. Actually voted the heaviest track of all time.
No
by
way.
someone. Can't remember who. It might have been Terrorizer. I want to say it was Terrorizer.
Does that mean that we can vote for like random tracks to be the heaviest track of all time, and people would like cite it? Because that'd be really cool. Because I vote the intro for Thomas the Tank Engine to be the heaviest track of all time.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Imagine if you had to like down tune it though. I reckon that'd be pretty.
Down tune it, play it twice as slow.
Yeah.
That is going to be fucking heavy.
I'll scream over it.
Done.
Done.
Alright, heaviest track of all time. Sorry, Neurosis. You can do like Neurosis style vocals. Shem can play the bagpipes at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, realistically, I should be, it's in my blood, I should be able to play bagpipes, but I just don't have the lungs for it.
Through bagpipes in blood.
Just fill the bagpipes with blood.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That sounds brutal. I don't think it probably wouldn't make a sound though, would it?
I actually bought an Azeri flute that was like the bagpipes come from this flute. It's called a dozaleh, and it's like two reed flutes, and you play at the same time, and they've got like two sets of holes. And I was like, this is gonna sound amazing. It's the precursor to the bagpipes. It's an ancient, several thousand-year-old instrument. I bought it. It came, and like Shem was there. I was like, I'm gonna play this flute for the first time. And I blow into this flute and it sounds like goats are dying. It sounded so awful. It sounds like so much worse than a bagpipe. I mean, bagpipes can sound good. You did did not think it
I
was
think it's
cool.
cool.
You were like, what the hell? you were like, stop immediately. Don't ever play that again. You did not think it was
It's grown
cool.
on me.
I want to hear it now. I need to hear this at some point.
I'll bring it in. It's
Oh, cool.
really loud.
It's like,
It's like Coronation Street there for a second.
It just sounds like a goat being kicked in the head. It's really sad. It's legit kind of a traumatic instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I can't wait to hear it.
I can't wait to play it. Yeah. Well, one interesting thing about this album, probably the last thing I have to say about it, is I think it contrasts really nicely with the Botanist album, because I think both albums are like less human focused and more nature without humans focused, or like how
Kind of like environmentally focused.
yeah, it's more like expansive, and I feel like there's like a focus on the human impact on nature, but more on the nature than the human, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I totally get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
say it very well, but I'm glad that you get it.
Yeah. No. And I think one of the last things I want to say about this album is I think it sounds fucking massive. I think the production is unbelievable, and Billy Anderson, the producer, done a great job. And I didn't know one of their earlier albums was produced by Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys.
No way!
Yeah, it was the Souls at Zero. He
Damn.
produced that album.
I mean,
Which
they
I
were a
did not
cross punk band, so I guess
Yeah,
they,
it kind of makes sense.
they liked Joe Biafra. I like his voice. He's a really good, nice
Yeah.
voice. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's a very good way of moving on to Botanist.
Yeah.
Well, for their Flora 6 album released in 2014.
Yeah, so there's another band from California, so we're continuing the Californian contingency of covering bands from that region.
They're from San Fran.
Obviously, one of the USPs of the band, to coin in business terms, the fact that they don't use guitars, right? So it's a hammered dulcimer. So I was saying dulcimer. God, I'm always pronouncing shit wrong.
It's an Italian word. It means like, I think, sweet sea, dolce, no?
Don't you?
A dolce, no?
So I didn't know what the instrument looked like because
I have one, but an arranged
Oh, no
version.
way, cool.
Yeah.
Because I knew when this band was first kind of breaking, I was just like, the whole thing was, oh, they don't use guitars. And I was like, okay, but I never bothered to research the instrument properly until now. So I was like, let me actually see what it looks like. And it's like a flat string instrument, isn't it? And you just, well, obviously, hence the
You've
hammered.
got like little wooden bits. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, imagine having a very small piano, and instead of the keys, you've just got like the actual little hammers.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really cool, and it's a great sound. I mean, do you think it's electronic somehow?
I don't think it's electronic.
I think he uses a pickup.
Okay.
It's like a guitar pickup because he runs it through a phone.
You can get pickups you can just put on stuff, because I've seen Iranians use it, because the dulcimer is like, you have it in Egypt, you've got it in the Mediterranean, Turkey, and the Middle East. It's like
Yeah.
a really old instrument. I think it came into Europe through that route.
Yeah.
Because like in different countries it's got different shapes, different names. So in like, for example, in Egypt it's called a canon. In Iran it's called a santur. But I think in Europe they just call it the hammered dulcimer. I think it might have like a slight different shape as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But I think, it's this album. It's kind of dreamscapey. It's very post-black metal-y, obviously, even though there's no guitars in it. But I think a direct quote from the main artist, who just got listed as Ultra Ball.
Yeah, Ultra Ball.
He is saying that he just wants to create music that represents the verdant realm. And I mean, and that's obviously evident in all the lyrical content. I mean,
And the artwork.
and the artwork,
And the
yeah.
names. Yeah.
And you know, I think even with the fact that he's foregoing using guitars, maybe that's why he wants to use a different instrument, because I think it sounds,
It sounds so natural.
yeah. And it's like, you know, like when I listen to the album, for me it's quite hard. I found this is one of the hardest albums to kind of dissect track by track. For me personally, because I feel like it's quite similar all the way throughout. And there's certain moments I was picked out as of liking at certain tracks, but like I just kind of sat back a bit and kind of just let it wash over me. It's one of those albums you kind of just have to just let it kind of flow through you.
Yeah.
And it just kind of reminded me of just being in a fucking meadow and the sun rising and just kind of just chilling in the field somewhere. Like that's what the album sounds like.
It's such a beautiful album. Like I cannot stress, if there's one album you listen to today, as much as Neurosis are amazing, you're going to find Neurosis at some point anyway, so go and listen to Botanist, because, you know, Floyd is right, they don't use any guitars, but it actually adds to the music. that there isn't guitars. Like, you have so much extra space, and the way the dulcimer sounds is not like any other instrument, but it's very similar to like that black metal style of tremolo picking.
Yeah.
And you've got like the way he uses the layering and the spaces and like the different ways of making sound using the instrument are really interesting. To me, it sounds like light. It sounds like light reflected through leaves in a canopy, and you've got like darker moments and lighter moments, and it's all like constantly scintillating. And it also sounds like water at times too. It sounds like it's like a really rich and sweet sound. It really is like how the name sounds as well. And it's heavy as fuck. It's also kind of dark at times and quite brooding too. And then it bursts into these moments of like ecstatic light and openness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. It's very good at kind of projecting the songs at different kind of volumes, and with the way the music swells and stuff, because you get moments that are quiet and then it kind of swells up. And I think those parts sound a lot more triumphant, and the quieter parts tend to sound a lot more kind of darker and brooding. And it's funny because I was listening to, I didn't realise that they dropped an album last year. As far as I'm aware, they're more like a fully fledged band now, because they've got 2 other members listed. So you've got my man Tony Thomas, Double T, on bass. Don't know if he goes by Double T, but
He does
you've
do
got
it.
Daturus on drums.
Daturus, isn't there like a band called Daturus? From Australia? Am I imagining that?
Possibly, maybe. I can neither confirm nor deny that.
I just look it up, I don't know how to spell that.
It's Daturus, but I think it's actually just a natural term for like a kind of flower or something, or I'm full of shit, I don't know. But I feel like there is a band called Daturus.
I know Arcturus and Nocturnus, but
Yeah, that's what I
but it's
Well, there is a band called The Tourist, but they don't look particularly big.
they're from Australia.
Kentucky.
Damn. I
Close
was
enough.
off by a little bit. I knew there was a Daturus.
That's not to say there isn't an Australian band, it might just be they're defunct and they don't have
If I just knew an Australian person who liked them and I just assumed they were Australian.
The Tourist.
Daturus?
Do you like The Tourist?
But I listened to that later album, and I think it's more like fully fledged. Like, it sounds more like a band, whereas this sounds more like something not akin to. Kind of go back to what you were saying. It doesn't sound like necessarily it's created by someone. It doesn't sound human. Whereas like the later stuff is more like a project. But so like I think this is and I think it's super cool. I've been researching all the song titles and all the different flowers. I think the most interesting one is, I'll let you pronounce it because you've done it far better than I did earlier.
I know exactly the song you're going to say. It is called Cinnamon. No, wait. Shut your holes. It's called Cinnamon. It's literally. It's what it says, okay? It's
You just threw her over the bridge.
Like a lamb to the slaughter, yeah, sorry about that.
You say much better than I do, and you're
I
like...
enjoy it. It says Cinnamon. It's called Cinnamon Parthenoxylon. That's what it's called. Parthenoxylon.
Yeah, and it's when I was doing my extensive research on Wikipedia, it was I found out that it's an evergreen tree native to South and East Asia, and it's harvested for safrole, which is an element of MDMA.
It is indeed. It is a precursor to the pesticide synergist piperonal butoxide. The flavorant and fragrance piperonal.
Yeah.
Piperonal.
But the cool thing about the lyrics, which we both picked up on, is that the last sort of quatrain at
Yeah.
the first line begins with the initials MDMA.
MDMA, and he's also actually like bracketed the M, the D, the M, and the A, and then he's also bracketed the words. So he's got M bracketed myriad bracketed Silesian flowers fall upon the corpses of the dead, deep intactogenic saffrole ecstasy, marking heightened euphoria of their passing to netherworld, acquittal of human blight.
Yeah.
Those are the lyrics.
Those aren't easy to say. I wasn't criticising you.
Oh, you weren't criticizing.
I don't think anything on this
No,
album
yeah,
is
that's
easy to
like,
say.
yeah, you did way better than I did.
There's some like taxonomists at home just like losing their shit. Everything's been mispronounced.
You're gonna email us right now. Yeah, there's some amazing words on this album. Like, it's just the lyrics are really compact. Like, there aren't many lyrics. They're kind of more like haikus or like very short. They kind of remind me of like like Japanese poetry at times.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's really poetic. Even the songs feel like literally structured around like the ways these flowers are and behave. Like there's some of the flowers, I'm sure you picked up on it too. Like when I was reading about the flowers and I read the lyrics were literally mentioning things that these flowers specifically do.
Yeah.
Like specific characteristics of the flowers, but in like a very flowery, very metaphorical way, and then other times in a very literal way. I think the least scientific song on the album was Wisteria.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only one I knew like, before research, and I was like, Wisteria, I know what that is.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool actually, because Wisteria is like quite a feminine plant, and he talks about Wisteria being strong and climbing and high and like never falling down and able to climb. Yeah. And I was reading about the history of Wisteria, and the taxonomist that named it, he said he named it after some like scientist guy, but he actually had a friend who was called Wister, and the scientist had like another random name. On Wikipedia they were like, his good friend, Wister.
Yeah, because I got here that it was named after some anatomist called Caspar Wister.
Yeah, but like there was like a businessman who was called Wister, or maybe he was also an anatomist, but it said they were really close friends, which in history speak means they were gay for each other. So I'm assuming that it might be named after his partner.
Ah, gotcha.
But I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but generally if they're really good friends and they're naming plants after each other, then...
It's funny because I do think there is a little bit of allegory in some of the songs, particularly Pteridophyte. Because that is about, it's what's known as a cryptogram, is in the sense that it's a plant that doesn't produce flowers or seeds but spores instead.
It hides the way that it produces.
Oh, okay.
Because like ferns, because what they do is like they have all their seeds curled up, and then when they actually release the seeds, they just go.
Yeah.
And then like the seeds are scattered.
Yeah.
Maybe it is spores, but yeah, sorry, I don't know.
No, I mean, well, I'm no expert, so I can't.
Me too.
But it's cool because in the lyrics, he's making a reference to Antherida and Archegonia, which are the female and male genitals of the plants.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's how they're genderless.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought there could be some social commentary for kind of how that is becoming a more prominent issue in society.
I don't know if it was intentional, because there was definitely a lot of mention of like the reproductive elements of the plants. Like there were like not only in that song, in a lot of songs of like how the actual, because some plants are hermaphroditic. So there was one plant that was, and he was like talking about it in like a godly way. I really liked that. Yeah. I really like how like accepting and how like venerated these elements of the plants were, because I feel like some people like, I think one of the reasons, flowers are weird, right? Flowers are literally like flower dicks and vaginas. Yeah. And we give people flower dicks and vaginas to be like, I love you, here's a flower dick vagina. And this is what we do.
It's true.
It's true. It's
do you
true.
think there's an alternative world where plants are living and they give other plants penises and disembodied genitalia?
I was just going to wait, what are you going with here? What word you going to say?
It just feels if you was like, it's like tied down. Well, in a way, we're like, so there's this theory that humans evolved. If Iggy was here, he'd say it way better than I do. But like humans kind of evolved in tandem with fungi, because they kind of like, we ate fungi, helped us be intelligent. I'm totally fucking this up. But when we die, we feed all that shit. We're like great fertilizer, basically. Yeah. Like we poop, that's good fertilizer. We spread seeds around in our poop, great fertilizer. And then we die and like we make mushrooms. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like we give each other flowers and plants, but ultimately they win, because they're going to be feeding off our corpses in about 50 to 60 years.
Oh yeah, they're going to be around much longer than us. I mean, we've got probably 1,000 years at best. That's probably optimistic.
I think we've got like 50 at most.
But it's funny, it reminded me of a fact, and I just want to preface this with, I do not grow cannabis plants.
You do not?
I found that fact recently, which I thought was quite cool, where obviously for a cannabis plant to bud, it has to be female. But if it experiences any trauma, it reverts to a male.
Oh, that's quite common in certain... So for a wisteria plant, if you want a wisteria to grow quicker, especially if it's like a Chinese wisteria, because they take 20 years to bloom, you'd have to traumatize the plant. Yeah. You've got to like stress the plant for it to bloom quicker.
That's mad.
I learned so much about plants reading about this album, so it was really cool to actually do that. And yeah, like, you know, it goes back to what we were saying about like the gender and sex identity of plants is really fascinating.
Yeah, and it just shows, you know, I mean, like I think when you grow up in a city, it's not something that is really that prevalent in your mind, like the whole thing about the nature of plants and stuff, because we don't really experience it as much. And if we do, it's at somewhere like a garden centre or in a garden where they've been, you know, like fucking, where they're just, you know, what's not as natural as it is finding it in the wild.
And sometimes it's actually just invasive plants as well, which are like screwing over native plants and making them go extinct and stuff. Yeah.
But it's funny because you were talking about like the lyrics and the vocals, and I actually think they're deliberately muted on this album.
I was going to say the same thing.
Because it's like, it's almost like that's not what's important. Like they're kind of blending into the back of everything else that's going on.
You
and I think,
barely notice them.
No, yeah, like if you wouldn't hear them unless you were trying to pay attention to the album.
Even then, like I was listening to the album and then the lyrics. Like, I think for, like, the first 2 songs, I can kind of hear the vocals at times, and then I just stop hearing the vocals. Like, I honestly, when I was reading the lyrics, I was like, there's this much lyrics? Yeah. Even though there's so few, I was really surprised that there was actually so much. Because it feels so, but I think that's definitely intentional, because I was reading about, like, the concept of the band. Like, the guy, the Botanist, who's, like, the guy who does the vocals and the drums and the dulcimer, he, let me find it. Oh no, this phone. So according to Otrabor, when Botanist gets recorded, he channels an entity within himself named the Botanist, a character whose perspective dictates the content of the music and lyrics. The Botanist holds a romantic worldview in which plants reclaim the earth after humanity has killed itself, and he is trying his damnedest to bring about the end of humanity because humanity is destroying the natural world, and the natural world must prevail. A little bit eco-fash, but he's not actually eco-fash, he's channeling this character who's like in another realm, so he's not actually like kill everybody, which I think is a little bit different. Just going to clarify that. But I think that's really interesting how he has the this like character that he assumes, it kind of portally.
Yeah, you know, I'm just a big fan of conceptual shit, and when there's a bit more to a band, then, you know, you look at like listed band members, just some dudes called Dave. A lot of one-man projects are like that as well. Just like Dave, everything. But like, you know, it's like, you know, I like the fact that there's an element of theatre that's went into these sort of projects, because I think it just adds to the whole mystique of it, and I'm all for it. I mean, there's one thing about Botanist, and there's a lot of artists that are like this, and I'm not saying it's off-putting, but I don't have time to listen to a lot of their work, especially when they're releasing 2 to 3 albums a year. Like bands that are overly prolific, sometimes it's easy to just be like, I can't deal with this because it's too
like
much
too
content.
high maintenance a band.
Yeah, it's like The Body. I mean, like every time I seem to look online, The Body have got 2 new albums. I'm just like, Jesus, I just can't keep up. But no, like I've always been a fan of this project, and yeah, I just think it's just really, I just like shit that's unique and different, and I think, you know, that's the sort of stuff, when you listen to metal for a while, that's the sort of thing I tend to crave, but not I don't like it because it's different, just because it's different, like it still has to be good.
It's good different.
Yeah, like the music still has to be, it's like Zeonada, for example, like, you know, like if they were experimenting with as many different genres as they do and it sounded shit, I'd be like, well, I don't like this because it sounds shit, but it doesn't sound shit, it sounds good, so, you know. And that's what I like, that combination of good music and something unique and unexplored. And it's
executed really well. And like he obviously has done his research. All the naming, like the cover is also beautiful. It's like an old school drawing as well.
Yeah.
And like for our like theories of human evolution and just like how genes work come from studying plants. Like the first time a dude realised that like you can pass on characteristics was Linnaeus, who was like a monk, I think in Austria or something in like the 1500s. I'm probably getting this wrong. I studied this at like GCSE at school, so it's like a million years ago. But I mean, he had like peas and shit in the garden of the cemetery, the monastery, and he was like, oh, if I put these together, the peas are bigger and the tomatoes are smaller, and like he just found out all this stuff, and that's how eventually Darwin was like, oh, these salmon birds are a bit weird and these flowers are a bit different. Maybe humans are like that too.
Yeah, I think that's, it's I think you could learn a lot from the study of sort of plants and how they've evolved and changed over the years and how they adapt to certain environments and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you look at, say, something like bindweed, for example, and how it curls around. I always love looking at pictures of bindweed and how it interacts and like the cracks of walls and stuff, and it just, like the wisteria, it's quite an invasive plant, so it just kind of gets everywhere and chokes the life of anything it can.
Yeah, plants are badass. I mean, there's a tree in Florida that will kill you in like 5 different ways. Like the bark is poisonous, the leaves are poisonous, the sap is poisonous, and if you sit too near it, if you just sit underneath it for a few hours, it'll just kill you. You will just die.
Shit.
It's like a really cool. No one actually knows evolutionarily why this tree is so poisonous. There's no like known evolutionary reason as to why a tree needs to defend itself so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, that just reminds me of that movie, The Happening.
Oh, yes.
This album is like the antithesis to that album, because this is all very like
So
positive and quite happy. But The Happening, the plot is that the plants are taking their revenge on humanity and releasing these pheromones and these spores that are forcing people to kill themselves. And it's got Mark Wahlberg in it.
So good.
And it's a horror film, and Mark Wahlberg delivers one of the best comedy performances I've ever seen, with his thick Boston accent.
There literally is a parasite that makes humans do that. There's a toxoplasmosis. Because basically, it's this parasite that only can... Oh god, I've forgotten how the life cycle works. However, basically, it lives, I think, in mouse poo or cat poo.
It's cats.
Cats eat the mice.
Ah, yeah.
So basically, mice get the parasite, and it makes mice take more risks. So when mice take more risks, it's in cat poo. When mice take more risks, they're more likely to be eaten by the cat. So basically, they get eaten by the cat. The parasite reproduces in the cat's stomach and is passed out through the cat poo. And humans can get it from cats. And they've found that 90% of people who ride motorbikes have toxoplasmosis. It's like,
amazing.
It's actually in a lot of the human population. But basically, the mice, when they smell a cat, the way the toxoplasmosis affects their brain is that in their brain, the cat smells good to the mouse.
Yeah.
And normally mice are scared of the smell of cats, and this is something that's like programmed from birth. They know to be scared of that smell.
Yeah.
So toxoplasmosis like literally makes mice just be like, oh my god, a cat! I'm horny for this fucking cat.
Okay, I've missed something. Why do people on bikes?
So basically, if you have a cat, if you hang around with cats, the toxoplasmosis can be carried over to you. It can actually infect humans as well.
Yeah.
And if you have toxoplasmosis in your brain, you're more likely to gamble, to cheat, to take risks, to do drugs, to ride motorbikes.
Okay,
So people who ride, who do dangerous things, a lot of the time, not everyone, often has toxoplasmosis as well.
God, yeah. I've got a far less cat shit. No, sorry, it's a fox shit fact. Cats can get cat AIDS from fox shit.
I knew they could get AIDS, but I didn't know from fox shit.
I think it was particularly cat AIDS, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, so that's why I don't know if that was just some propaganda released by all these Tories wanting to kill foxes.
Maybe it was
Possibly,
actually.
because
There's a fox that comes and shits by my door all the time.
yeah, I mean,
Fun fact.
they make the most horrific noises. Someone needs to fucking sample the noises foxes make.
I'm
Foxes make.
sure some
and put on a
furry
black metal album.
black metal band.
Yeah,
Foxonym.
Foxborough.
Fursum.
Fursum.
But so someone should do it.
Amazing. But you know, I just want to quickly say, I think that humanity, on the topic of the Happening, which is a great film, it's
fantastic.
It's really amusing to watch.
Yeah.
But I do think we have been kind of bastardizing nature for a very long
doubt.
time. You know, synthesizing plants to make shitty versions of medication, and even someone like Monsanto taking charge of all the fucking seeds and wanting to, GMO all that sort of stuff. And I feel like eventually, I do think it's going to come back to bite us in the arse somehow.
So Botanist.
Yeah. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this album, and yeah, like I said, it's more of an experience than an album per se, which is why I don't have much to say about the music itself, because I feel like throughout the album it is very similar. My favourite track probably is I'm going to give it a shot, the Cinnamomum pad that knocks Cylon. See, it's not fair when you're laughing already. But it's
You went in so confident that you like stacked it halfway through.
It's like when I tried to say, what was the one where I completely botched?
Masturbating.
No, that was just masturbating. That was horrific. It was no Caligula where I gave up halfway through.
Caligula. That was funny.
But I like this track because I feel like this is the one that's got a lot more. It's got a good example of the different dynamics of the album because it's the tree itself in question is critically endangered.
It is indeed. It's been harvested at a high rate.
And I think there's a part in the track that's just been laid very well, and it's almost like I don't know if it is a horn, but it sounds like a horn. One of the parts has got a very kind of like ominous, doomy feel to it, but there's a good juxtaposition of the more dreamlike music that's featured on the rest of the album. And I feel like this track is probably the one that has the biggest message or the biggest like pro-environmentalism message on the album.
There's another endangered tree as well that's native to only Table Mountain in South Africa on the Cape. There's a few branches of it that grow nearby, but they think those have been planted. They can't. They're trying really hard to save it. Let me find it. It's called like silverleaf, and the actual name of the tree is the Leucadendron argenteum. So yeah, that's another. I like that he's going into all these endangered things, and the mangroves as well.
Yeah.
Those are like really important for climate change because they actually stop like mass like flooding, and they keep like soils together, and they're actually like really good for washing, like cleaning water and like air around them. They're really important flood barriers in places like India, and unfortunately they're being cut down, which is like contributing to flooding. So again, there's those guys.
But it's like just shows how it's just such a chain reaction of events really that can lead to such devastation because like for millions of years pre-humans, like certain plant types, insects, bees were reacting or interacting with plant life and prospering. And yet we'd come along and just kind of just fucking,
We fucked it.
Yeah.
We've got to unfuck it, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to pump those numbers. Make those plants happy again. Yeah, make the bees and the birds and the plants and everything.
Do you think anybody that has hay fever was cruel to plants in a previous life?
Oh my god. Maybe. But it is getting worse because of pollution. Pollution makes hay fever worse.
Oh, does it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why it's worse in London.
Yeah.
Because the pollution makes the pollen makes trees produce more pollen because it makes the trees think.
Also, must be trying to fight to. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, I think also because of the added heat, it makes them produce it earlier as well because the trees think it's spring sooner in London, and you've got shit tons of different kinds of pollen. So there's like fields nearby. So you've got the pollen from like Surrey, the pollen in London, and then you've got it's just a horrible city to have hay fever in. There's a lot more breathing diseases in London because of it.
Yeah, I mean, probably exacerbated by the London Underground as well. I mean, that's just a fucking hive for
oh my
bacteria.
God. And I'm honestly, like, after COVID, I'm still going to wear a mask on the Underground.
I would always wear a mask on the Underground because I just think it's just totally fucking, you can smell it in the air. Like, it's just...
I honestly wanted to.
Yeah.
But, and like, I was kind of glad that COVID has made wearing masks more okay. Because I was kind of embarrassed to wear a mask before, but now I'm like, fuck it, I'm wearing a mask forever.
And fuck it, I'm going to call it TFL here because, like, and I'm not blaming the workers, but, like, it is not fucking cleaned.
It's
that
disgusting.
Underground is not being cleaned. There's all these signs and all this antiviral wiping going on.
We clean it every
and I'm
day.
not blaming the staff because they've cut the fucking staff, which is why they don't have enough people to clean it. So it's not the staff's fault, but the fucking TFL, it is not fucking clean. So don't stop trying to pretend that your buses and your trains have been having fucking daily antiviral wipes. Because every time I put my hand on the banister, guess what? It's still fucking filthy with dirt.
I saw a picture the other day. There's a Facebook group called Shit London, and I don't know if you guys have ever been on it. It's amazing. There was a picture. There was a guy on a bus, and there was a dude like sitting on the back seat, and you've got two sets of two seats facing each other. And like we've got these things in London where they've got like a bib on the seat to be like, don't sit here, social distancing. So the guy's sitting on the back seat, and he's stretched out his legs. And he's got no shoes on and no socks on. What? And he's just put his like cheesy looking feet on these seats in like the middle of a rush hour bus.
I'm starting to sound like a Nurgle Instagram post.
These are like not even like Nurgle manicured feet. They're like fucking gnarly looking yellowy things that you can just tell are like.
Allow that shit.
Oh, fucking London.
No, that's grim.
Yeah.
That's fucking grim.
Yeah, I mean, it will give Voices something to write about for the next album, for sure. Yeah.
Right, that's everything I want to say about the Botanists. I suggest maybe we should move on to the third and final
Yes!
release.
Slain Hell by Steel Bearing Hand.
So this is a new discovery for me. So this is a relatively new band from Dallas, Texas.
Indeed you do.
And sorry, my throat's just closed up.
The plants
Sound like I was getting emotional. But I've been digging this album for a while now, since it was released maybe a week or two ago. I can't remember. Time just doesn't exist
March
anymore.
26th?
Potentially, yeah, it might be March.
I think it's what.
So I'm quite interested to hear what your take on this album is.
I went in with very low expectations because they had a goofy name.
Yeah.
I like the name, and I thought the album art was really cool, and I was really pleasantly surprised. They're really good. They were like really rock and roll. It's not something I would normally listen to for sure, but I enjoyed it. There was like kind of like a happy bolt thrower vibe.
Yeah.
It was like I haven't listened to thrash in a million years. Like it's not really been something I listened to since I was a teenager. And this was just really fun. It was like really, really way faster than what I'm used to listening to. They were just like I had so much energy. These guys must be like really young. I tried to Google them, couldn't find any names. I couldn't find any lyrics.
Yeah.
But I am really impressed with the album. I found the first thing I read was like an Angry Metal Guy review, and he came down on the album quite hard.
Yeah.
He only gave him a 2.5.
He's quite like historically quite strict, isn't he?
He's very critical. His critique was that the album was really good for the first two songs, and it was too long, and then they kind of lost momentum. And I think he wasn't right. I think the album's really good. I don't think that was an issue of the album at all.
Yeah. See, I think probably where that comes from is the fact that they're closing it with a 12-minute song.
Mm.
And I think when you've got 5 other tracks, or let me just make sure it was 5, 1, 2, 3, 4,
6.
5. So 6 tracks in total, but the 6th track is 12 minutes long. I think when all the other tracks are about 6 minutes, I think it's always a bit of a curveball that kind of...
Yeah, it gets longer and longer.
Yeah, because I think, typically speaking, someone listening to this subgenre might not necessarily be a Sleep fan or used to necessarily a 12-minute long track.
Mm-hmm.
But like what I like about this album is I think it does a very, very good job of blending a lot of the extreme metal subgenres together. So you've got almost a perfect blend of thrash, death, black, even the more like doom death sounds kind of popularized by like the early Swedish bands.
Mm.
And even like there's a lot of riffs that have it's a style that's kind of been popularized by Goat Whore a lot. Don't know if you've listened to much Goat Whore, but they've got that real kind of like, it's like trad infused thrash almost.
Okay.
So it's got that rock and roll kind of, like southern sound to it. And they do a great job of just blending all that together in this melting pot. And I think a lot of times that can maybe spin a few people out and be like, oh, there's too much, they're trying to do too much. But I personally love it. I think they've done a great blend of different styles. And I think each track kind of leans towards each subgenre more than the others. So for example, you got the tracks Tombspawn and Lichgate, which are very death metal heavy. There's some elements of thrash, but it's primarily quite death metal orientated. Mm. And what's interesting to me is they use the lower registers, so the deeper growls for the death metal tracks, but tend to revert back to the higher, more shrill black metal, even thrashy at time vocals for some of the more frenetic, higher energy sort of thrash tracks.
It was a very frantic, chaotic album,
yeah.
for sure. Like, it's like the cover. The cover is like really... There's like so much going on.
Yeah.
I like that though. It reminds me of like early Bolt Thrower, but like cartoony. And there's like a little bit of sword and sorcery-esque kind of stuff going on. Like the actual logo has a hand that's made of steel, holding steel. So it's a steel bearing hand logo, which I think like is very tongue-in-cheek. I think this is going to be a really... I mean, they better be fucking good live, because this, to me, feels like it's being marketed as a live band. To me, this feels like this is a band that's going to support Gamma go on a world tour, and fucking slay it.
Yeah, these guys in Goat Whore would go hand in hand. I don't want to compare them to Goat Whore too much, but it is what immediately comes to mind when I listen to it. But they've definitely carved out their own niche. And one thing I want to say is the production on this album is far better than their first album.
Yeah.
So they've definitely markedly...
It's been 4 years since the...
Yeah, so 2015 since the first one, the self-titled one. And it just sounds so much crisper. I always like albums that sound like it's the instruments mesh well together, but you can still pick out the different instruments. Like you can still pick out the bass and the rhythm section here and there, And another thing I want to say about this album is the fucking solos are blistering.
They have really good guitar work on this.
Yeah, it's fucking manic. Like there's elements of like there's neoclassical elements. There's almost like some Kerry King like whammy fucking demonic shit, and just loads of like this one of the tracks, I'll find out which one it was, has a dual solo.
Oh, I know the one you mean. I think that's my favourite track. Is it did I write it down? Is it literally?
It's the Latin one, Per Tenebras ad Lucem.
Oh, does that mean is it like light and Tenebras is like dark?
Through darkness into light, yeah, so you're pretty much on the ball with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it had that classic kind of like trad infused thrashiness at the beginning, very energetic, fast paced, and then there was like a really fucking about 3 minutes in, it had a really good like groovy riff as well, and it had this weird thing where it kept like escalating in pitch.
I really like that.
And it was also when it got to like the fever pitch, it just erupted into a solo, and it was just like, and then it was just fucking like, it's really like over the top and frenetic, but it's like when a band can write songs this well, that's when it works.
Right.
It's when it's done as a gimmick and done as a, like it's. I'm not even gonna nay. I can't. No band that does it shit like that comes to mind at the moment. But I've heard plenty of like homogenous death metal, thrash metal. That I'm just like, oh, this is just a poor imitation of that. But like, this is very clearly like well written and put together.
I feel like I just really want to see them play live.
If they're anything like Goat Horde, they'd be fucking sick live, because that band is renowned as being a live band, and they are tremendous live.
Sorry.
The way that you looked at me, like this is you were like, oh! Like just before I could see the despair in your eyes.
You should isolate that sound. It could be the one of the intros on the new Botanist album.
It could be like a new stair sound. These guys just sound really fun. I really hope they wear spandex. I don't know why. I just want them to wear spandex and have like big Conan style belts.
It sounds like leather, doesn't it? It sounds like leather and studs and.
Yeah, it sounds really 80s. What are you gonna say?
You know we met the singer, right?
Who?
Of this band.
Still very hair.
Yeah, he plays guitar. Wyatt is the guitarist from Blood of the Sun that supported Lucifer.
We met these guys.
Yeah, we met the singer Wyatt because I was talking to him.
Oh my god, no way!
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were there as well for a bit, but I think I might have spoken
really
to him.
Nice.
Yeah, he was like, he's long blonde hair. I don't know if you've got him on Facebook. He wears glasses, but he's the singer and lead guitarist. And it was really funny because he was playing with Blood of the Sun. And I was like, I was just talking to them because they're all from America, and
they're all really funny guys.
They're all really funny guys, and like Hank from Saint Vitus plays drums in Blood of the Sun, and I'd actually met Hank before, but I didn't even realise he was the drummer of Saint Vitus, and I was like, oh hey man, how you doing? And he was like, oh hey brother, it was really funny.
It was like the
I only
first
realised
show we
afterwards.
ever played.
Yeah.
And we were like, it was a massive show. We were shitting bricks. It was like Lucifer.
No, but it was so funny because I was talking to Wyatt and I was like, oh, do you play in other bands? And he's like, yeah, I'm in this other metal band. No one gives a shit. It's called Steel Bearing Hand. We fucking suck. He was like, no one cares about my band. And I was like, I'll check them out, dude. And it was so funny. Yeah, and then when Floyd was like, oh, check out Steel Bearing Hand, I was like, oh, we got a new album. Cool. And I didn't realise that Wyatt's the guitar. He does all the lead guitar and all the vocals.
I'm so glad.
He's a really nice dude.
I'm so glad you remember this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't even remember anything. Whenever we play a show, I'm certain I have face blindness.
Yeah,
honestly, I have face blindness, I have name blindness, but I don't even remember anything that happens at a show. I'm turning into a bassist who'll turn up at a venue and be like, I played a show here.
Yeah, no, Wyatt was a really friendly, really nice dude. I don't really have people on Facebook because I'm like, whatever.
I get you.
People can have me.
I don't add them either, but like somehow they find me. But I remember the only thing I remember about Blood of the Sun is I was in my dressing room getting ready and I could hear them talking next door and they were having an argument about flat earth because one of the guys was a flat earth. There was like 10 people in the band. Yeah. I don't know which one it was. Yeah. But he was like, no man, when you get older you'll believe in God. And I was like, but dude, like they had pictures of it from space and it was really a strange conversation to be hearing.
I saw like a proper cockney looking guy the other day wearing a flat earth crew shirt.
Nice.
And it was
was it ships worldwide?
But the weird thing was, it had a picture of a globe as the design of the shirt. So I don't know if that was tongue-in-cheek or... I don't know what was going on. It might have been a joke shirt, I don't know. But
I just don't know anymore.
But I don't know.
I just don't know.
I mean, that's one conspiracy theory I can't get behind, I'm afraid. It's...
I can get around it, but not behind it.
It was funny, actually. One of the... It's since deleted, but there was one quote made by someone who is... high up in the Flat Earth Society committee.
I know the one you're going to say.
And they said like, they were bragging about the numbers and said we've now expanded to over 200,000 flat earthers around the globe. It's just like...
Obviously got globes on the mind.
Yeah.
It's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, yeah, just fucking...
I actually managed to get a list of the personnel in this back
I
here.
couldn't find the personnel.
I just took it from Metal Archives.
It was not on...
Well, it wasn't on the album, but it's on the general lineup.
Oh my god.
So you got Chris Bonham on bass.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to make a boner joke because he's probably heard it all before. Alex Johnson, who's doing rhythm guitar, and as Shem mentioned, Wyatt Burton is the lead guitarist and vocalist, and Anthony Vallejo on drums.
Ah.
But yeah, great job to all the guys because I was impressed with
Yeah, nice one,
every
guys.
aspect of
Really
the instrumentation
cool.
on this album.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, damn, it's really good. I was really surprised. I'm really glad you guys made me listen to it because otherwise I wouldn't have picked up this album based on my usual listening habits. So I'm kind of glad I discovered these guys.
It's one of those ones where, like, Texas is a scene that I think is kind of dominated by Pantera. You mentioned Texas. You say to someone, name a metal band from Texas, they'll say Pantera, but there's like and obviously it's such a massive state as well, so it seems strange that there's not too many, like, super well-known bands from there. So you got Power Trip, who got big. Unfortunately, Riley Gale died the other year, which was tragic. And obviously Devourment from Texas as well.
Nice.
Slam bands, but yeah, there's a lot of Texas bands I've heard, and bands from that sort of southern regions, like a lot of the NOLA bands as well. They kind of do have that southern swing and soul in the music.
Mm-hmm.
I think just really kind of sets them apart from the rest of like the metal scene. Like you just need to look at all the NOLA bands, whether it be I think Goat Whore from there, and Crowbar, and I Hate God. So
yeah, historically that part of America has been like musically very rich in like blues and in terms of that kind of history, so it makes sense. It's really cool. I don't really know much about, I'm more of like a California, San Francisco kind of vibe. I don't really I've not really retained, I used to like Crowbar and I kind of just stopped liking them for a while.
Crowbar I still think to this day have got some of the heaviest sounding guitars in any album I've ever heard. Like,
they're really heavy, yeah.
It's I love Kirk as well. He seems like a really nice guy.
He's really sweet. He's just so nice. He's really small and he's just really
Right,
wholesome.
okay.
We were like dancing together, and he just loves Accept, and he was just standing and fist pumping and like jumping up and down like a happy person. It was really cute. Like usually people are just like doing this. I did find myself headbanging to this album, not even realising. I don't headbang. And I was just sitting at my computer and I was just like, wait, where's my head moving?
Yeah.
You had that too, huh?
Yeah.
There's some super groovy, like proper moshable riffs on this album. There's some moments that are just like super, they're so easy to get into if you're into like, extreme metal. Like I think it's like it's a perfect like introduction to an amalgamation of all the different subgenres like I was saying earlier.
For real, yeah.
There's like a death metal song, and the last song's a doom metal song. I really like that.
Yeah, it even had like even a bit of a bolt thrower vibe.
Yeah.
Sometimes it had some mid-paced riffs as well, and but yeah. So and I think it was quite ambitious for them to kind of close it with a 12-minute track because, like I was saying, typically fans of this particular subgenre, like especially of thrash, are not used to like slower paced, longer songs. So I think they definitely pushed the boat out in terms of their experimentation with song lengths and kind of genre splicing.
I thought they possibly put lots of thought into how they structured the album too, because the first two songs are 3 minutes long, and then it's like 5, then it's 6, then it's like 12.
Yeah.
So they've like done it in kind of time order. So I guess if you have like a short attention span, you can just get it all out of the way, and then you can just put it down.
Yeah.
And then the Doom fans will like stay till the end, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point because I think that's something that I feel like potentially a lot of newer bands maybe don't take into consideration. How an album itself is structured.
It's so important.
I think it's super important because I think you've got to have whether it be a strong opener and it can't taper off too much in the middle because my personal opinion is there's so many albums that just become so shit in the middle. They have a strong end, a strong beginning and a strong end.
And they'll like sag in the middle.
Yeah, and it's just filler in the middle. I'm just like, and I'll just listen to it. And it's funny because sometimes I'll even skip a track if it doesn't catch me in the first couple of minutes. So I'm just going to presume that it's not that good. So I think I'm kind of maybe programmed to think that most albums tend to drop off in the middle. And then sometimes I go back and revisit an album and realise there's a really good track placed nearer the middle of the album that I just didn't give much time to, because, like I said, I'm programmed to think that that's when an album kind of drops off before it kind of climaxes again.
For sure. I think, like, it depends on the kind of band you are, and I think, like, you know, if a band is listening, it's definitely something, if you haven't before, it's something really important to consider. Like, some bands think of it like you're constructing a set. Again, a set is like, I feel like every band puts loads of thought into a set, because you have that audience and you can see them in front of you, and you want to make sure that they're happy because they're right there and you get immediate feedback. Yeah. Whereas with an album, I think sometimes people don't necessarily put as much thought into it, partly because a lot of people listen to albums on shuffle or it comes on a playlist, but even then you still need to think about these things, because that can kind of affect how people even listen to your album, depending on where that playlist song, your like title song, is going to go.
But maybe that's why newer bands don't have that kind of predisposition to create an album that way, because they might have ingested music in a newer era where you don't listen to an album all the way through.
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't listen to an album all the way through 99% of the time. I would much rather like go on Spotify and have like a really big playlist so that my ADHD is satisfied and I don't have to worry about getting bored halfway through an album, God forbid. But yeah, like I still think it's really important, and it can also inform how you construct a set as well. Yeah,
it's I feel like Ackerfeld kind of trolls people with his sets sometimes.
Yeah.
So I feel like I do always like how he is totally playing on the fact that there's a large contingent of Opeth fans, maybe not a large, but a sizable contingent of Opeth fans who kind of are bitter at the fact that they've kind of delved into the more sort of like old school proggy territory, and he's not death growling anymore and any of the new stuff. And the fact that he would like predominantly make sure that the set list is mainly that material, and like he's actually such a funny and humorous guy. And
I love his banter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a great talking voice too.
Oh yeah, it's really like, he'd be great doing an audiobook.
He would, yeah. He should do like a 70s style audiobook where he's like doing like 70s thriller novels or something.
What I would love to hear him do is audio commentary for the Lords of Chaos film. I think that would be amazing.
That would be sick.
I would really like that a lot.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I would really like that.
Have you guys seen the film? I mean,
I watched 20 minutes and I had to put it down
because
it's
tough.
So hard.
Really?
Yeah.
It's honestly embarrassing to watch. Not the act, like, okay, like the thing is, I have a lot of derision for like black metal bands of that era. Like I just don't think it's cool. I think it's really stupid and goofy, and I really like that the film is highlighting that, because they just come across as cringe teenagers, which is what they were. And it's really accurate, but like I just can't watch it. Sorry.
But no, yeah, you're 100% right. Sorry to interrupt, but it's the truth. Like they were just like kids with fuck all else to do. But like, but the way the film frames it is, speaking about this with a friend earlier. Well, not earlier today, but earlier in the week, was that's irrelevant.
It's relevant now.
But it's we're talking about how like the film frames the fact that it's the music that turns people into these cringy fucking edgelords.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it makes it out like, it's the scene that's like that. When I feel like the black metal scene has kind of evolved and left a lot of the second wave goofiness behind.
Yeah, it's like that scene where they're like in a KFC or something, and then like one of them's like, is that a like a Motorhead patch?
Scorpions.
Scorpions.
Yeah, it's Varg walks in with a Scorpions patch, and his response was, "I don't fucking like the Scorpions." So.
And he's all like, ooh, he's all embarrassed. I mean, I think Varg's stupid anyway, but like, yeah, it's just a really cringy thing to have to experience.
I'm looking forward to seeing him on the next Bellator. I mean, his combat skills are on point.
Oh, I think he'd lose even fighting Chris Weidman in his current state. Like, fucking...
I'm not watching that clip, by the way. I refuse to watch it. We're referencing a UFC fighter who broke his leg, much in the same way of Anderson Silva.
His shin just snapped, and his foot just went... very brutal.
No.
Yeah, I think, you know what, maybe we should do a reaction video of me watching Lords of Chaos and screaming. Like, it would be pretty funny. We should do that one day.
Yeah, at one point I just got really angry. I was like, fuck this shit!
We should do a group Lords of Chaos screening reaction. It would be really bad.
Yeah, it was such a shit film. There's a few jump scares in it as well.
There's jump scares!
There's a couple of jump scares which actually... Jump scares always catch me. So I can't believe I've been caught by a fucking jump scare in Lords of Chaos.
So do they have like the guy killing himself and the guy?
Yeah, so Dead kills
Dead
himself.
kills himself.
That's the point at which I watched
Euronymous
it up
takes a
to.
picture.
They do have all that stuff in
The
there.
way they even did it was just so like goofy.
Yeah.
From what I remember, right?
I'm trying to remember, but yeah, because how it's framed. Euronymous is the good guy
Yeah.
in the film, so he's.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the film, he cuts his hair short and
That's
starts dressing normally.
Oh, it's like he's like trying to get out.
Yeah, my phase has ended, and that's when Varg goes to kill him. And there's a scene where he drinks some chocolate milk, which is like totally like.
What, Varg or Euronymous?
Varg, yeah. So while he's stabbing him, like in self-defense, like how many times he do it, he takes the time out to grab some chocolate milk out the fridge and drink it. But there's no explanation as to why that is in there. I don't know, maybe to make him look a bit more socio-psychopathic.
Yeah, that's probably why, right?
But yeah, it's I forgot a lot of what happened in that film, but it was a shit.
It's just really bad.
It sounds
yeah.
awesome.
But you know what? I'm glad it's bad because if it was good, then there'd be way more edgelords.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll tell you one thing that I have heard, just while we're on the topic of films quickly, is that The Taste of Metal is meant to be quite good. It's the Riz Ahmed film.
Sucks so
No,
hard,
don't look. It's depressing, but I think it's. I haven't watched it because it's so depressing that when Shem told me, Shem just. I was like, hey Shem. Shem, I'm feeling really bad today. I'm kind of depressed. And Shem was like, let me tell you about this really depressing film. And 20 minutes later, I was like,
I feel worse.
He gets tinnitus, right? That's the plot, yeah.
No, it's upsetting. It's a good film.
Yeah.
But it's depressing as shit.
yeah.
And there's no metal in it whatsoever. I don't know why they called it The Sound of Metal, because his band's like an art rock band. They're not metal. I don't know why they said that. I don't know.
Well, maybe that's why it's the same reason why the...
There's like, he plays drums for like 5-10 seconds at the start of the film.
Yeah.
And then the whole film is just set in like a death commune.
Yeah.
And nothing happens apart from it's just depressing and sad.
It sounds like it's like an introspective drama about the psychological impact of losing your hearing as a musician. I think that will probably appeal to a lot of people in the scene, and it's probably an important film to watch because people do not look after their hearing, including you.
It is very
They have to
true.
force
I
you to wear
agree with
earplugs.
I
you.
stop wearing earplugs.
Yeah.
It is very true.
I have tinnitus. I don't know a single person who listens to metal that does not have tinnitus, and that's not a good thing. It's not something that like we should boast about. It's like my worst nightmare is to lose my hearing. I don't know what I'd rather lose, my sight or my hearing.
It's a real tough one.
It's traumatic. There's a scene where like he has to stop playing because like at first he just tries to push through it, and he's like, it doesn't matter, it's not a big deal, and like he's like kind of just like talking over people, and like he's trying to cover up the fact he can't hear them, and he's playing a gig, and he just fucking just stacks the gig, and he just gets up and like walks out, and he just like has a panic attack in an alley.
Yeah.
And then like his girlfriend, who's like the singer and guitarist in his band, like comes out, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? And then like she realizes, and then like that's the turning point where he's like, oh no, this is real.
Yeah, I don't really want to watch that.
No, it's upsetting.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
depressing
Like,
and
I
upsetting.
don't watch it for that reason. I won't.
Nah,
But
it was
I
upsetting.
do think that like I don't want to necessarily stop people from watching it if it means that someone watches it and is like, you know what, I'm going to get my ears checked. I'm going to get some earplugs because I think
you're right.
that is a good clarification.
You're
to
very
me.
right. It
It's
is
not
very
a
good
bad
clarification.
film.
No, it's not a bad film.
It's a scary film. It's scary for people like us who are musicians.
Yes.
And that's good.
No,
it should be scary.
It's a very well filmed. Riz Ahmed acts very well.
Riz Ahmed is an incredible
He's a very
actor.
good actor. I'm not slating his performance or the director or anything like that. My issue is with the people.
It's a feel-bad film.
No, my issue is with the people that promoted the movie and made out it was like a music movie, because it's not, but I do 100% agree with you. It's super important for musicians to watch and understand the fucking how important it is to look after your
and
hearing.
music fans too. Like if you enjoy
and music fans who just go to gigs. Yeah, you don't have to be in a band.
Because sometimes, so like when I started going to gigs, right, it was cool not to wear earplugs. It was cool to stand at the front and like not wear. And I went to incredibly loud shows and did not wear earplugs. And I was like, oh, I'm so cool. And I'd have tinnitus. I'd be like, oh, I had the real gig experience because I have tinnitus for 3 days. And that's, you know, when you hear tinnitus, you're never gonna hear that frequency again. That's the last time you hear it forever.
Can I just say something that's important for stubborn assholes like me? Is that I don't like wearing those cheap foamy earplugs that you get at venues and stuff, because they cut too much sound out and you can't hear anything. Nina got me to buy a proper pair of earplugs.
They're £20.
From Amazon, they're like £20. You can probably get good ones for
live.
like £15.
Yeah.
And you get a little case that you put on your keys, and you carry them around with you. I've always got them. And they've got filters, so they just cut out the highest damaging frequencies and the lowest damaging frequencies, but you can hear everything else okay.
Yeah, and a really important thing, so any musician in the UK, if you can prove that you've got released music or you've played a show, for free, you can go to a charity in Camden. It's a really nice place. They'll test your ears and they'll make you a pair of moulded earplugs that normally cost £150. They'll do it for about 40 quid. And you get a hearing test. They'll syringe your ears if you need your ears syringed. And they will tell you like what they told me exactly how many frequencies I'd lost. I'd lost like the top and the bottom frequencies.
Yeah.
Like a bit. And they'll just tell you what state your ears are in. I have those earplugs. I've used them live, and I've used these £20 Amazon earplugs live. The Amazon earplugs are better.
Yeah.
No way.
The Amazon earplugs are better. They're easier to wear. You hear more, and they actually block out more sound.
Yeah.
And the filters, whenever I listen to a band or if I'm performing, I always wear the filtered earplugs. They're only 20 quid. You can just go on Amazon, type in filtered earplugs. There's like 5 different brands saying the exact same thing, and it's just honestly, it's the best investment you're going to make in terms of your health and how much you enjoy music, because it's nicer than having the foam earplugs. And it feels better and you can't even see them because they glitter.
It's nicer than not being able to hear as well.
It sure is,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, how can you hear someone giving you an awesome compliment about your merch if you have no hearing?
I just remember like everybody kind of bragging the day after a festival, saying, "Oh yeah, dude, I fucking still got ringing in my ears." Just that's just not cool.
That's not good.
Just like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wear earplugs now. The only downside, well, it's not a downside, but it just makes me feel kind of sleepy, which is why I fell asleep on the barrier for Bloodbath. Damnation. Nothing against any members of Bloodbath, but I was super tired. I travelled up to Damnation on the day. I went gym in the morning, went gym at 5 a.m, got the train at 8 a.m, it started at 12, it finished at 12 p.m, so I was just fucked.
I love the idea that the members of Bloodbath saw you sleeping while they were playing live, and they were just like, damn.
I would feel so unappreciated. If I saw someone asleep on a barrier, I'd be like, wow. Look at this fucking asshole.
Floyd is an asshole, but like from the perspective of the band, that's a really unusual thing to see. So,
the good thing is I have my hair cut, so I have that generic look.
Yeah,
like big guy, band shirt, beard, bald, so like...
You're just every guy at festival.
Exactly, yeah. So there's about 10 of me on the barrier alone, so...
That's pretty cool. I just love that. That's amazing.
It's a very funny mental image.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to stop.
I think so.
Alright, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. If you want to be on the podcast, give us a shout if you're a musician or an industry person. If you want to recommend us something to listen to, please do. We will check it out. Thank you and goodbye.
Until next time.